9, 1921. Now when I go out to the high schools, I say, how old am I? Do you know those kids cannot think? They got to take an iPod or a cell phone to figure out. It's a shame.
Yeah.
But that's what our education has come to. And I was in high school, my senior year of high school, in 1939. I should have graduated. My desire was to be a graduate of the Naval Academy. And you know, the Word of God says, delight yourself in the Lord, and He'll grant you the desires of your heart.
Amen.
God did that on many occasions. And 1939, I had a stepmother, and I'll be honest with you, I hated her. And so much so that I got into a fight with her. In January of '39, I went from an honor roll student, 90 and above average, to a total failure in 3 months. That's when I told my dad, I gotta get out of the house. So he asked me what I wanted to do. I said, I want to join the Navy. He took me down to the Navy recruiting, and I walked in, I asked the chief, you got a 20-year contract? He almost fell out of his chair. He said, you being a smart aleck. I said, no. I was 17 years old. And I said, no. I said, I've read the brochures. You can join the Navy, spend 20 years and retire. That's my goal. And that's one of the things I teach when I go out to speak to high school kids. Set goals and carry them out.
That's right.
Follow through. My dad taught me when I was 9 years old, Stuart, your word is to be your bond.
That's right.
And that meant that if I made an appointment, I would keep it. If I say I'm going to be someplace at a certain hour, I'll be there. And if I can't, I'll call them and let them know. So few people today can say yes or no. I'll think about it. I'll have to check my calendar. And all different kinds of excuses. I'm one that says yes or no.
Yeah.
Now,
But he does check his calendar.
this picture here is my senior high school. And when I show this out of schools, I ask the kids, what do you notice about that photograph? And it is, we all wore suits, shirts, and ties to school.
I love
And girls wore dresses or skirts. They didn't wear shorts. They didn't wear pants. They wore dresses. You could tell between a boy and a girl. Our hair was cut. It wasn't shaggy and long, but nobody had to tell us that we had to do it. It was instilled with us in our families. And that is not being taught to our children today. They do whatever they want. And that's exactly what the Word of God says. Every man does what is right in his own eyes, but the ends are death.
That's right.
Now, when I went through the recruit training at Newport, Rhode Island, but before I got there, when I was in recruiting, I took my test. My test gave me the highest scores that I could possibly get. That entitled me to every school the Navy had to offer. However, the chief told me, he said, Hedley, go get a bite to eat, come back, and the doctor will give you a physical. Well, the doctor took one look at me and said, son, we can't take you. You're too small. I was 4'11", weighed 112 pounds, the smallest kid in senior high school. So I asked the chief, I said, is there somebody I can speak to? He said, I'll let you talk to the commander. So the commander asked me, he said, what's your problem? I said, I want to join the Navy, but I'm too small. He says, you're sincere about the Navy? I said, yes. Well, Roosevelt has started another organization under this alphabet, which is the Civilian Conservation Corps. So he said, I'm going to send you there to build you up physically, mentally, and spiritually. So off I went to Burdett, New York, and when I got there, I stood alongside my locker and drew a pencil mark. I did that every 30 days until I was 5'2", eyes were blue, weighed 122 pounds, and I was back. But the next day, they handed me an axe and said, you're going to chop down trees, which I did for about 2 months. That was the physical end. Well, Phillips, the command colonel, called me into his office, and he said, Hedley, we see you have a real good aptitude for mathematics. How would you like to be a surveyor? I said, you train me and I'll do it. So they did, and I ended the rest of my career in the CCCs as a surveyor. That was the mental part. Well, I met this beautiful blonde girl in the coffee shop, and she was sitting by herself, and so I asked her if I could sit down with her, and she said, sure. I was having a Coke, and so in the conversation, Lois said, Stuart, would you go to church with me on Sunday? Church? But I wanted to be with her, so I went. Little did I know what was going to transpire from that experience. Because the next time, I think it was in September 1939, she invited me to go to church on a Wednesday night. Wednesday night? I said, all right. I wanted to go with her. Well, that's the night that God changed my life.
Amen.
I walked into that church that night, and the speaker is a former gangster of the Dutch Schultz mob of New York City. He is the enforcer. And he shared with us how he had murdered 7 men. Now that's from Charles Lucky Luciano's gang, Al Capone's gang, the Palumbo gang, and the Purple gang of New York that wanted to muscle in on Dutch Schultz's territory. He put them in a cement bucket and dumped them in the Hudson River. But the next words that he said was what hit me. He said, it's not for those crimes that I committed that will keep me out of heaven. And he took his arm and he said, the only thing that will keep any of you out of heaven is if you don't believe that Jesus Christ paid the penalty for your crimes and your sins.
All right.
I sat 5 rows back. I'm 17 years old. I'm relating. I lied, I cheated, I stole, I drank, I smoked. All were sins. I could not sit in my seat that evening. I got up, I came forward, and I sat down in the forward pew. He came down off the platform and asked me, he said, "What did you come forward for?" I said, "I want to know that Christ just like you know it." He said, "Son, the words that you say with your mouth do not save you. It's the attitude of your heart towards God."
That's right.
I said, "I mean business." I've always been a very positive person. So he said, "All right." And he led me in the sinner's prayer, and I accepted Jesus Christ into my heart that night. That was the changing of my life from that moment on. Because as soon as I was 5'2", I weighed 122 pounds, I was on the doorstep of the recruiting office. Off I went to Newport, Rhode Island for training. I learned a lesson. I smarted off to a chief. You don't do that.
No.
And the results were, grab your rifle up over your head and run 11 laps around the field. I collapsed.
Sure.
And I learned never to talk back to a chief.
Never.
Now, just for a joke, the power of a chief. This chief told his seaman, "Get a bucket of salt water and a soap and a scrubber and get out there and scrub that deck." So this young fella is out there scrubbing away, and he's growling and groaning and complaining. The captain walked by. Captain says, "What's your problem, son?" I said, "Sir, if that chief tells me I gotta jump overboard, do I have to do it?"
Yeah.
So the captain thought for a minute. "Son, if that chief tells you to jump overboard, you come straight to my cabin, but you be absolutely sure you're soaking wet."
All right. Good captain.
Now, I didn't talk back, but I asked a question. When we finished our training there in Newport, we got orders to the West Virginia, which was anchored off Long Beach. And I said, "Chief, here we are on the Atlantic coast, and they're sending us all the way to the Pacific. Why don't they send us to the Atlantic Fleet?" His reply was, "So you can't go home every night." West Virginia, beautiful battleship that I went aboard. And I was assigned to the 3rd Division. Ensign Harris, my division officer, said, "Hedley, I want you to train as gun pointer on main battery. That's 16-inch, 45 caliber. The shell stands 5'2", weighs 2,700 pounds.
Yeah.
It takes 5 100-pound bags of black powder to hurl that shell from here to Oceanside. If I've got that gun elevated at maximum height." Well, I told you how I had that experience in June of 41. For the whole year, now back down till January, when I went aboard the ship on October 29th, 1940. That was my birthday. And this is a picture of me at 20 years of age. And that picture has been paraded in New York City, Washington, D.C., New Jersey, and Chicago. So that was taken on Thanksgiving Day, November 26, 1941. And this other photograph is where we were sitting in the front yard in the car. And now back down, because January of 41, we were supposed to up anchor on January the 5th and head for the Suez Canal, Panama Canal, excuse me, and go to the Atlantic Fleet. While we were bringing in the anchor, the captain announced, our orders have been changed. We are to proceed directly to Pearl Harbor. Roosevelt was moving the whole fleet out to Pearl to set up an aggravation against the enemy. Now, I don't know how many of you remember Roosevelt's fireside chats Thursday evening. I heard him from the time I was a little child, when he became president. He would always end his message. This is after he went before Congress and wanted to declare war against Hitler. Congress said no. Roosevelt went to the people of the nation. The people said no. Then his fireside chat ended this way. Eleanor hates war. My little friend fella hates war. That was a Scotty. And he said, I hate war. I'll never put this country into war unless we are attacked first.
Oh boy. That's what happened.
And I have the whole history, documentary, of the preparation for the attack on Pearl Harbor. It was amazing, because 1972, I was working with Dr. Gene French with Youth for Christ as their counselor. And we were having a rally at Hoover High School on a Saturday night. Gene came up to me and he said, Stu, I got somebody I want you to meet. I says, who's that? He says, I'm not going to tell you. I'll take you backstage and introduce you to him. So he did. He says, I want you to meet the man that led the attack on Pearl Harbor. I didn't get to say a word. He said, what ship were you on? I says, the USS West Virginia. Why do you ask? I was out to kill you. I said, you almost did. They put 9 torpedoes into our ship and 2 bombs. One of the bombs came right through the turret that I was in. 11 men were burned beyond recognition, and 2 of us walked out alive. Well, backing up again, when we were in Long Beach, before we even got to Hawaii, the chief informed us, as soon as we were on our way to Hawaii, that we are going to spend more time at sea than we are in port. Admiral Yarnell and Admiral Richardson had set up a policy that there's to be only 1 battle fleet in Pearl at a time. We adhered to that. Kimmel carried on the same policy. Roosevelt fired both Yarnell and Roosevelt and Richardson for that policy he set up. He wanted the fleet in Pearl. Well, Kimmel followed the same rule, and we adhered to that from the day we got out there on January the 8th until Thursday before the attack. Then we were informed we're going to be going into port for an annual military inspection. But it was on orders from the White House, November 26th, when the word went out to General Short and Admiral Kimmel, prepare for sabotage. That meant bring in everything you've got for a close operation. All 187 airplanes were outside the hangar at 5 airfields. 9 battleships were in port. 96 ships were in that harbor that morning. They couldn't miss, and we were sitting ducks. Now, I have to look at it in the positive light. Had we been at sea when they attacked, we would have lost 5 times what we lost at Pearl Harbor.
Right.
You know, it's amazing. The report is that several of the ships were sunk. Ladies and gentlemen, no ship was sunk. The Oklahoma capsized.
Right.
It was still above water. The Arizona was blown in half, still above water. We had 9 torpedoes in our port side, and I thought we were going to roll over the same as the Oklahoma did. But what I didn't know was a lieutenant with 10 men were going through the starboard side of our ship, opening up the sea valves, flooding the compartments on the starboard side to counteract the torpedo flooding on the port. And our ship leveled up and went straight down in the mud. Now they said our ship was sunk. The American flag was flying on the stern of the ship while we were sitting on the bottom. USS Utah capsized, but was not sunk. Sunk means you have to be under the water.
Right.
And the American flag cannot no longer fly. How many of you have been out to Pearl and visited the Arizona Memorial? How many of you are aware that the Arizona is to this day in a semi-state of commission? Why? Because the flagpole that you see is not attached to the memorial, it's attached to the Arizona.
10 minutes more.
10 minutes. When the West Virginia went down, I was assigned to the heavy cruiser USS San Francisco, probably one of the most battle-torn cruisers of the Navy and still stayed afloat. And I'll tell you why. Because we had a captain, Captain Callahan, that when us youngsters were going aboard his ship, he informed us we're going to forget about Navy protocol and we're going to operate this vessel on 2 principles. We're going to anticipate what's going to happen, and when it does, we're going to improvise. I'm going to give you an example. We were in the Battle of Guadalcanal during the night battle. About 2:30 in the morning, we were coming out of the battle and the Helena was just forward of us. And they challenged us, didn't know whether we were friend or foe. All of our running lights and signal lights, identification lights were out. We had taken 7 14-inch shell hits on the bridge. The admiral was killed, the captain was killed, the executive officer was killed, the navigator was killed, the gun boss was killed, chief quartermaster, and the helmsman. When those shells came through the pilot house, we got hit with 27 shells. And an amazing thing, because the Japanese were prepared to recapture Henderson Field. So all their ammunition was shore bombardment, not armor piercing. If it had been armor piercing, I doubt whether we would have survived. But when those shells hit our ship, the nose explodes and opens up, and cylinders fly all over. And they're filled with potassium and magnesium. And as soon as the oxygen hits them, they burst into flames. We had 27 fires recorded at one time. Also, we are probably the most highly decorated ship. We had 4 Medal of Honors awarded that night.
Oh, wow.
Now to back down as to the Helena challenging us, and we can't respond. Bruce McCandless, his dad used to be the commanding officer at 32nd Street before the war. Bruce McCandless knew that they were loading their guns. They would blow us right out of the water. What he did, he grabbed a flashlight, ran up on the bow of the ship, and sent C-838. That's our call letters. We watched the Helena unload in the ocean the next morning. Also, I'm going to tell you this, even though I shouldn't. When we came out of the battle, I was to go to Central Station and be with the gyro. And I had the J8 phones on, which gives me communication throughout the ship. And at about 10:15, I heard 3 torpedo wakes on our port bow. I went up 5 flights of ladders and hit topside. Don Jenkins, first class seaman, asked me, "Stu, who's in Central Station?" I said, "Nobody." He went right down there. If he had reported me, I could have been taken out on the fantail and shot for leaving my post in time of war. But I hit topside just as those 3 torpedoes passed between the Frisco and the Helena and hit the Juno. Wow. So help me, if I held a glass of water out at arm's level and dropped it, before that glass hit the floor, there was no ship on the ocean. Oh. That is where we lost the 5 Sullivan brothers. But we lost a lot more than that. And Hoover, who was the commanding officer aboard the Helena, was not about to stop to pick up survivors, because he knew there was a Japanese submarine in that area, and he didn't want to lose any more ships. But he got reprimanded when we pulled into Espiritu Santos by Admiral Halsey. However, when Halsey came to the realization of what Hoover was telling him, he apologized. Well, we brought that ship back under the orders that Callahan had established. that was to anticipate what's going to happen and improvise when we do. And that's how we brought that ship back home. And again, I'll share with you, in the damage control, which I was with during that battle, my buddy and I, Eddie Hilbert rather, were ordered to go up on gun 6 to take over, because all the guns on top side, anti-aircraft guns, gun 1, gun 3, gun 5, and gun 7 on the starboard side were wiped out by 14-inch armor-piercing shells. Gun 2, gun 4, gun 8 on the starboard port side were wiped out. Gun 6 was the only gun that didn't get hit. The next morning, I was asked if I would be willing to identify bodies. And I told Dr. McMorris, yes. And the way I did it, I went around and I found that the fellows had their dog tag on their neck. Now, if they had had them in December 7th, a lot of those bodies would have been identified. To this day, when you go out to the cemetery at the Punch Bowl, you will see unknown, unknown, unknown all over the place. I wore my dog tag, and I've got one of them in my pocket even to this day. And it's got a little notch in it. So when I came up to gun 7, there were 5 dead men. And I opened up their mouth, put their dog tag in, and clamped their jaws shut, and put a red tag on them, so that they could be identified and known that they were dead, not injured. The most horrible experience of World War II for me was to come up to gun 5 and see my best buddy, Johnny Anderson, blown in half. I saw his head and shoulders underneath the vent, and I started laughing. Dr. Momotis doubled up his fist and smashed me in the jaw as hard as he could. And he told me, he says, "Stuart, you have every right to put me on report because an officer has no authority to strike an enlisted man. But if I hadn't have done it, you would have gone stark raving mad." Snapped me out of it, and I continued identifying bodies, both port and starboard. I'm just grateful that the good Lord had his hand on me and saw me through what I did.
Amen.
And gave me a mind that works. I have no computer, no iPod, no cell phone, none of that stuff.
Good for you.
My computer is right up here. The good Lord has given me a real good mind.
Amen.
Thank you.
Hey. Whoa.
I had duty in Washington for 6 years. And 1949, January, I was introduced to the girl that I would marry. I didn't know it at the time. And yes, I did, because God had already made it very well known that she was the gal that he had chosen for me. We met on the 31st of January. I proposed to her on the 16th of April, and we got married on June 18th, 1949. We had 64 beautiful wonderful years together. When I married her, she was a Roman Catholic. And my mother wanted me to get her converted so she could join the Eastern Star. I said, Mom, no way. But after she accepted the Lord, she broke out almost 100 and some odd letters that I had mailed to her. In every letter, I quoted scripture. And I wasn't even aware of it. But the first, well, we were walking across Pennsylvania Avenue just before Christmas of '49, and she grabbed my arm and she said, Stuart, you know what I want for Christmas? I said, no, if we don't get out of the middle of this street, we ain't going to see Christmas. She said, I want a Bible. So I bought her a Bible. She read it through completely 3 times. And the verse that spoke to her heart was Psalms 42, verse 1 and 2. As the hart panteth after the brooks, so panteth my soul after thee, O God. When shall I come and appear before the living God? That was God calling her to himself. April 5th, 1959, my wife accepted Christ as her Savior. And I'll tell you, she led 110 people to the Lord the first year she was converted.
Wonderful.
She taught the twos for 37 years.
And
2 years.
who was one of them?
Yep.
Melanie was
Yep.
one of them.
And it was amazing because the twos that my wife taught grew up, got married, and brought their twos back to her.
Oh, how
So,
precious.
and we both had a very, very lucrative life together because I took her on a honeymoon every 5 years. On our 25th, we went all over the world. And God opened up doors for us that we never dreamed. The one that was open was to go to Israel. That was for our 45th anniversary. And I'll tell you, of all the places I've been in the world, Israel is the greatest.
Yes. Awesome.
Because that's where my Savior gave his life that I might have life.
Amen.
And all that receive him will have their sins forgiven and have eternal life. My
Amen.
wife passed away 4 years ago. And you know, I purposed in my heart that I was not going to sit around and brood. I was going to pour my life into others. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Thank you.
This is on film. It is preserved for posterity. We have one more thing that we have a little bit of time for. And I want y'all to sit down. We're going to pray in a few minutes. A lot of us were at the school board meeting when we were talking against